Welcome back to the We Aspire What's Working with Gender Equity Data Insights to Further and Advance Gender Equity. Now, we're going to dive straight into here navigating bias. This is a really tricky topic and one which a lot of companies have actually tried to make progress on. So let's have a look at what does some of the research say about companies or effective strategies to actually do this. Now, one of the biggest headlines we found, if you look at the research, is that bias training, which was very popular a few years ago, especially, where you try and show people that men are biased towards women, then actually, when you do this, what actually happens, it seems like a straightforward way. If you're more educated, then you'll make a better decision. It's not necessarily the case. And so this study here, so it comes out in 2021, reducing discrimination in the field. They found that one-off diversity trainings fail to significantly change workplace behaviors. And what's really interesting is they can actually make it work. So organizations which implemented these, they sometimes found that the men would take the view that they've now been educated and such that they no longer have any bias. Thus, they would then go, well, I've resolved that I've been through the training, bias has been, or no bias has been achieved. It's kind of laughable maybe, but it's the reality. And so actually accentuated the issue moving forward. So anyway, fascinating study there. When it comes to this one, Google, obviously, you hear a lot about Google in terms of very advanced. They've done amazing things around supporting women in different careers. The biggest headline here is just their online training is not necessarily the most effective strategy. Turns out more immersive kind of scenario-based training can be more effective. And we kind of go into a little bit in this one here. So presenting the data, and you guess what? This is what we're trying to do in part. If we can present data, that seems to be the most effective way of helping educate and change people's minds. And so that's what we're trying to do here, opens up people's ideas to what's really going on. And it's been found to be the most effective tool for kind of moving or kind of making progress when it comes to around bias. Another really interesting one was this one here. So this is female CEOs. They found that when a female CEO is in place, the language which is associated with females in leadership changes, and changes dramatically and changes very positively. In fact, they started to see things like strength of women as a positive outcome, whereas others, prior to that, if you've got sometimes female leadership can be seen as bossy or kind of negative. Female CEOs can change the perception of what female leaders looks like. So really interesting thing, and it's really curious that can be one thing. If you're on a board or something like that, that's what you could be doing, and that's the impact you can be doing. It's kind of like those subtle things which change when you look to have females in senior leadership roles. Another one here in terms of process transparency. Again, one of the resounding results from across the research was that bias exists. Bias is really difficult to overcome, actually, and it's really hard to change. So then, if all those are the way it is, what's the best way to do it? Well, arguably, it's about designing a process which can remove the opportunity for bias. And transparency is a beautiful way of doing that, being open about your process, about who's checking it, removing unnecessary information like gender, if it's not necessary. Maybe, let's say, for an example, in an application, like to use a certain piece of technology. There's a great study back in the hiring section around the Hubble telescope, where if you can have transparency in your process, if you can have remove bias or remove certain information to just sidestep the need or potential for bias, that produces the best result. Next session is all about performance. Let's dive into that one in a moment.